The observation deck of the Galactic Council station hummed with the low chatter of 1,000 alien species. Evan stood near the transparisteel viewport, nursing a drink that tasted vaguely of copper and regret. 3 months into his assignment as Earth's junior diplomatic aide, and he still felt like an imposter among the stars. The Calvothi delegation brushed past him, their crystalline bodies refracting the light of a dozen distant suns. They didn't acknowledge him. Few species did. Humans were the newest members of the Council, barely a century since first contact, and most of the galaxy still viewed them as curiosities at best, primitives at worst. "The most magnificent woman I've ever seen," Evan whispered to himself, his gaze fixed on a figure across the vast chamber. She stood alone at the central podium, surrounded by holographic displays that floated around her like orbiting moons. Her movements were precise, deliberate, as she manipulated data streams with practiced ease. Even from this distance, Evan could see the intensity in her posture, the absolute focus that seemed to bend the very air around her. Then she turned slowly to him. Their eyes met across the impossible distance of the observation deck, and Evan felt his breath catch. It wasn't her beauty, though. She was striking, with dark hair pulled back and eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies. It was something else, something that made every alien in the room seem to fade into irrelevance. Susan. He'd heard the name whispered in the corridors, always with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Dr. Susan Chen, the human who had done the impossible. She beckoned to him with a slight tilt of her head, and Evan found his feet moving before his brain could protest. As he navigated through the crowd of delegates, he caught fragments of conversation in a dozen languages, all being auto-translated by his neural implant. Human audacity knows no bounds. Mathematical impossibility. Our best computational minds couldn't solve it in 10,000 cycles. Evan reached the podium. And up close, Susan was even more formidable. Not intimidating, there was warmth in her expression, but there was an unmistakable weight of brilliance that hung around her like a cloak. "You're Evan, aren't you?" she asked, her voice carrying that peculiar human quality that seemed to unsettle so many aliens' genuine emotion. "Ambassador Torres mentioned you might be here." Yes, Dr. Chen. I've heard. Well, everyone's heard about what you did." Susan's expression flickered with something between amusement and exhaustion. "The Andromeda theorem? I just proved what was already there. Mathematics doesn't care about species or politics. But no one else could do it," Evan said, glancing at the holographic equations still floating around them. They might as well have been written in ancient hieroglyphics for all he understood them. The Xylar spent 2 centuries on it. The theoretical collective declared it unsolvable. They gave up too easily. Susan's fingers danced through the holograms, and the equations rearranged themselves into elegant patterns. "That's the thing about being human, Evan. We're too stubborn to know when we're supposed to quit." A shadow fell over them, literally. The Xylar prime mathematician loomed above, its 12 limbs creating a cage of chitinous armor around the podium. When it spoke, its translator rendered the clicking sounds into a deep, resonant voice. "Human arrogance will not compensate for the fundamental limits of your biology," it said. "You solved one problem. The Xylar have solved millions over our 1,000-year history in the Council." Susan didn't flinch. She looked up at the massive alien, with the same calm focus Evan had seen earlier. "You're absolutely right, Prime Mathematician. My biology is limited. I'll be lucky to live another 60 years. My brain processes information slower than your quantum computational matrices." The Xylar seemed satisfied, beginning to turn away. "But here's what you don't understand," Susan continued, and her voice carried across the observation deck. Conversations stopped. Aliens turned to listen. "Those limitations are exactly why I succeeded." The prime mathematician froze. Susan manipulated the holographs, and the Andromeda theorem expanded into 3 dimensions, a crystalline structure of pure logic that seemed almost alive. "You treated this as a computational problem. Brute force. Process every possibility until you find the solution." But you're thinking in linear time, even with quantum processing. She touched a point in the structure, and it began to rotate. Humans don't have that luxury. We have to be creative. We have to find shortcuts. We have to imagine solutions that shouldn't exist and then bend reality until they do. We've spent our entire evolutionary history being too weak, too slow, too fragile. So we got clever instead. Evan watched as aliens from every corner of the galaxy pressed closer, their various sensory organs fixed on Susan. The Andromeda theorem isn't just mathematics, she said. It's a testament to what happens when a species is forced to think laterally for its entire existence. When you can't outlast the problem, you have to outsmart it. The prime mathematician's limbs trembled, a sign of deep thought in Xylar physiology. You are saying that human limitation is an advantage? I'm saying that every species brings something unique to the Council, Susan replied. The Xylar bring computational power. The Kalavothi bring temporal perception. The Vreen bring hive-mind collaboration. Humans? She smiled, and it was fierce and proud. We bring the audacity to look at the impossible and ask, why not? The observation deck erupted. Not in applause, most species didn't have that custom, but in their equivalent expressions of approval. The Xylar's chittering, the Kalvothi's harmonic resonance, the Vreen's synchronized movements. Susan turned back to Evan, and he saw the exhaustion finally show in her eyes. Sorry for the speech. I've been preparing that for weeks. Had to wait for the right moment. That was incredible, Evan breathed. You just changed how they see us. No, Susan corrected gently. I just reminded them that there's a reason Earth was invited to the Council in the first place. We're not here to be like them. We're here to be ourselves, stubborn, creative, impossible humans. As the delegates began to disperse, chattering excitedly in their various languages, Evan realized something. The galaxy didn't need humanity to be perfect or powerful or technologically superior. It needed humanity to be exactly what they'd always been, the species that looked at the stars and decided to reach them, despite having no wings. The most magnificent woman I've ever seen, Evan had whispered. And he'd been right. But not for the reasons he'd first thought. Susan Chen was magnificent because she embodied the very thing that made humanity special. The refusal to accept limitations as final answers. And as the twin suns of the station system set beyond the viewport, painting the cosmos in shades of amber and gold, Evan felt something shift in his chest. Pride. Not just in Susan, but in his species. In every human who'd ever looked at the impossible and smiled. They were here. They were staying. And the galaxy would never be quite the same.